Should you get a MacBook Air or a MacBook Neo? After spending well over 6 months with an Air and now a few months with the Neo, I'll take you through what you miss out on by going with the Neo, but also what you gain. Like with color. The MacBook Neo lineup features bolder colors, especially the citrus color I got. And the cool thing Apple did here is they color matched the keyboard keys to the device, so they're not just white, they are slightly tinted. On top of that, macOS has a different color scheme to match your MacBook Neo color, while the MacBook Air's colors are a bit less saturated and honestly a bit less fun. Another big thing I noticed switching back and forth between the two is that while both have this great large trackpad, the MacBook Neo's actually physically clicks down. Now, normally having a physical trackpad isn't ideal because on a lot of laptops, the force it takes to press down on various parts of the trackpad can vary quite a bit, but with this one, Apple just knocked it out of the park. A lot of people won't even notice the difference. It's the same level of effort to click down no matter where you click, and multi-touch gestures work just like they should. The only feature missing from the mechanical trackpad is Force Touch, which happens when you click down forcefully. By default, that triggers the lookup tool. Another big differentiator between these two laptops is the RAM and chip inside. On paper, the M5 processor is roughly 20% faster in single-core and nearly double the performance in multi-core. Plus, it has a dedicated neural accelerator for AI workloads, but in my everyday use with these two laptops, writing in Google Docs, using Claude, editing my website, I really haven't felt that gap. And speaking of the website, by the way, you should definitely check that out if you haven't. That's where we post updates on the tech we cover from around the web, new content, and where you'll find all of the products we recommend on our shop page. Another small thing that stands out is there's no camera cutout on the MacBook Neo. It has a larger uniform bezel instead. Now, I don't know anyone who's going to pick a laptop based on that alone, but I do kind of prefer it over the camera cutout on the Air. Now, let's go over everything that you miss out on by going with the MacBook Neo instead of the MacBook Air. First up, there's no option for a larger size. The MacBook Air comes in both a 13-inch and 15-inch variant, while the MacBook Neo only comes in a 13-inch configuration. Another thing you start to notice when you switch back and forth between these two is there's something about the MacBook Neo's display that looks a bit different. It's a bit less saturated and bluer in warmer lighting environments than the Air's display. And that's due to two missing features on the Neo. The first one is True Tone. That's Apple's display technology that automatically adjusts white balance based on your ambient environment. So if you've got warmer lights on, the display adjusts to a warmer tone. The second technology the MacBook Neo is missing is P3 wide color. The MacBook Neo's display is just sRGB. What does that actually mean? Well, P3 is a modern color standard that's about 25% larger than sRGB, so you'll see richer colors, specifically reds and greens, which is why the MacBook Air's display looks slightly better with colors. So if you're doing any visual creative work on your MacBook, this could actually matter quite a bit. Another difference I've noticed is that the MacBook Air also has a slightly, and I do mean slightly, better anti-reflective coating. Another big thing you miss out on by going with the MacBook Neo is MagSafe 3. This is Apple's proprietary charger, color-matched to your MacBook, that magnetically pops off if somebody trips over the cord instead of sending your laptop flying across the room. And an even more important thing that MagSafe does is free up a USB-C port. So you'll always have two USB-C ports available on the MacBook Air even when it's charging, which is not the case with the Neo. The ports on the MacBook Air are also Thunderbolt 4 USB-C, while the Neo has one USB 3 port and one USB 2 port, so transfers will take much longer. A 5 gig file of photos or videos, that's going to take 2 to 3 seconds to transfer on USB-C 4, 10 to 15 seconds on USB 3, and 2 to 3 minutes on USB 2. And speaking of ports, you can also drive up to 2 external monitors with the MacBook Air, while the Neo only supports one. You also can't get more than 512 gigs of storage with the Neo, whereas with the MacBook Air, if you need it, you can configure it all the way up to 4 terabytes. Another thing you'll miss out on by going with the Neo is better battery life. This is something that I've noticed firsthand. The MacBook Neo's battery life is a bit worse than my MacBook Airs. Apple rates the Neo for up to 11 hours of wireless web browsing, while the MacBook Air gets 15. The MacBook Air also supports fast charging if you have a 70-watt or faster charger, while the MacBook Neo doesn't get a similar feature. It tops out at around 20 to 30 watts. All right, now let's go through a few smaller things that you miss out on. First, Wi-Fi. The Neo only supports Wi-Fi 6E, not Wi-Fi 7, which in 2026 I still don't think will matter to most people, but a few years down the road, yeah, it may. If you're planning to use programs like GarageBand, Logic Pro, or any other program that you want to use with high impedance headphones, the MacBook Air supports high impedance headphones over its 3.5mm jack, while the MacBook Neo does not. The MacBook Air also has a 12-megapixel center stage camera, while the Neo has a 1080p FaceTime HD camera. But for most people, I don't think this difference will matter unless you really just need that desk view that does come with the center stage one. But in general, I think, look, MacBook webcams are fine, they're just not great. Generally, I think most people are just better off using their iPhone as a webcam with a little mount like this one I got from Belkin. The image quality is just going to be so much better. Another difference is speakers. The Neo has 2, the 13-inch Air has 4, and the 15-inch has 6. And yes, my 15-inch does sound a bit better, but we're still talking laptop speakers here. I don't think it's going to be worth upgrading to a MacBook Air just for the speakers alone. You'd be better off saving the money that you'd spend on the Air to just buy a good set of desk speakers like the LSX Mark II LT from Kef that I got from Costco earlier this year, and man, those speakers, they still knock me out of my seat. The last big thing that you're going to miss out on by going with the MacBook Neo is a backlit keyboard, which, depending on how you use your computer, could matter to you. For me, I've never really needed one. Now, before we get to recommendations, there is one last major difference between these two that we haven't talked about yet, and that's price. The MacBook Neo at the time of recording here in the US retails for $699 after a recent price hike, while the MacBook Air starts at $1299 for the 13-inch version and $1499 for the 15-inch. That's a pretty big price difference. The Neo costs almost half what a MacBook Air costs. So, given all of that, should you get a MacBook Neo or a MacBook Air? Well, first, if you're getting this for school, for most students where portability is key, especially if you'll have access to an external monitor at home or in your dorm room, the MacBook Neo is definitely the first option that I would consider. Given the price difference, unless you know that you'll be running graphics-intensive workloads that the Neo genuinely can't handle, or you're a graphic design student who needs better color accuracy, the Neo just makes a lot of sense. And to be clear, even 4K video editing is something people have thrown at this thing, and it's doable. For students and other users who mainly work in Google Docs, you do word processing, web browsing, and then of course watching content, the MacBook Neo is definitely worth considering. And if you're a student, I'll leave a link in the blog post to Apple's Education Store. There is an education discount available on both the MacBook Neo and MacBook Air. And if you want to save even more, check out the eBay links in our blog post for both models. You can save a good bit on used devices, and I'll also leave a link to Apple's refurbished store in the blog post as well. Now, if you're getting a casual MacBook just to use around home and you want something bigger than your phone, the price difference is large enough that most people, I think, will be fine with the MacBook Neo. It should last you several years. Now, if you plan to store a lot of photos or videos on it, that's where you may want to bump it up to 512 gigs for $100 US more, and that configuration also gets you Touch ID. And in general, the reason I got that version is that Touch ID is just so much more convenient. You don't just use it to log into your Mac, but also to change settings, access the Passwords app, or purchase and download items. So those have been my thoughts on whether to get a MacBook Air or a MacBook Neo. Let me know what you think in the comments. Did I miss anything? Do you agree with my take? And which one would you ultimately go with? And to see more of my comparisons, like my comparison between the 15-inch and 13-inch MacBook Air, you can click here for those, or click here to see more of my reviews on Apple products like the 17 Pro Max and the iPhone Air. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder, and if you made it all the way to the end, let me know by commenting Citrus. Thanks for watching.